Alright, and for our main study today, we're going to wrap up the series on the false doctrines of the mainframe assemblies. And if God is willing, we'll wrap it up. Maybe I will give us another message or another teaching on this next week. But as it stands, we've covered through the Trinity, we've covered through the pre-trib rapture, and we've covered many other false doctrines. We've covered the falseness of the mainly the even the Yehudim, the Jews, Orthodox Jews especially, are adamant about not speaking Yahweh's name. We've covered many things, and now we're going to cover the law, so to speak, as they call it. Every time I turn on the radio, I'm hearing someone say either, "Well, we're not supposed to keep the law. We can't keep the law," things like that, and so if I'm hearing radio speakers and teachers teach this, then I feel obligated that anyone tuning into this can have a defense against the doctrines that's being taught out there, so we can know the truth and see what the Bible says, and let the truth set us free. Dear Heavenly Father Yahweh, we do thank you for this Sabbath day. We thank you for allowing us to come together, and as we study this, Father Yahweh, help us to understand your ways, help us to see your doctrines, help us to see your scriptures, help us to know your truth, and let your truth be made known to all. As we study this, Father Yahweh, let us know your truth, and let the doctrines and teachings of men fade away, and just let your truth stand, and your spirit stand. In Yahshua's name we ask, make it so, hallelujah. Alright, so let's get started here. As we said, a lot of the mainframe assemblies teach that we're not supposed to keep the law. And actually, some teach that it's not necessary. Some teach that it's not possible. And some teach that even trying to do so is a sin. It's wrong for us to try and keep the law. So let's get started here and see what's going on with that. The reasons they give, if we can, the arguments against obedience. Alright, the first one. Okay, we're going to break this down in three parts. The arguments against obedience be our first part. And then the truth. Yahshua said that Yahshua was born. And when he was born, he was named Yahshua because he will free the people from their sins. So we can have freedom from sin. And then we're going to move on to reasons why, to try and justify why they're teaching this. And the like of that. So we're going to wrap this up in three different parts. The first part is the arguments against obedience. And the first one is the law is only given to Israel. So if we go to Romans, in chapter 2, verse 25, we will see that that's true. The law is only given to Israel. But what does Romans chapter 2, verse 25 say? And of course Paul does get into this also in other places, where he says the son of promise, not the son of the flesh. But in Romans chapter 2, he mentions this about the who is the one that is born naturally, or the one that is obedient. He says that even if, okay, we're here now, so let's read it. It says here, for circumcision verily profiteth if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. So those who are circumcised on the 8th day, those who are born Jews, and they have the circumcision, it's not the circumcision that matters as far as if they're going to break other laws. If they're going to break any of the laws, then their circumcision has become made uncircumcision. He continues on here, says, therefore, if the uncircumcision keep the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and the circumcision dost transgress the law? For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, and in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of Elohim. So, who is Israel? Who is Israel? Is Israel the son of the promise, or is Israel the son of the flesh? The one who's been born a Jew, his mother was a Jew, and he was circumcised on the 8th day, and he goes out and lives as a worldly person. He may be of the Hebrew race, he may be of the tribe of Yehuda, if you will, but he's not one of the ones that Yahweh spoke these commandments to. But if somebody else will say and look upon these commandments and say, yeah, this is good. Yahweh is good, and we're going to do what Yahweh says. He has been grafted in to the vine. The others have been cut off so he can be grafted in. So we're grafted into Israel because we keep the commandments. Because we have the Spirit of Yahweh teaching us and guiding us, we become part of Israel. So if the law is only given to Israel, yes, that's true. But the strangers can be joined to Israel. Anyone can be joined to Israel when they keep that oath. When they say, I want to be part of Israel. Is that not the prayer that we've been taught to pray by the many television evangelists and radio evangelists? When they say, Dear Father Yahweh, I accept Yeshua as my Savior. Bam, we're Israel. We become Israel when we said that. We've been grafted in. And now, the law is only for Israel? That's true. But who is Israel? It's not the entire world, Yahweh's creation. Does he care only for one tribe? Does he care only for 12 tribes? Or does he care for the entire world that he created? And who is Israel? Alright, so the first one there, the law is given only to Israel. Alright, second one. No one can keep the law. That was what I've heard many times. Oh, it's not possible. And we'll get into that later. But in the flesh, it is not possible. But in the Spirit, has not the Spirit been poured out now? Have we not been baptized in the Spirit? And have not we received the Spirit by being baptized? Then the Spirit will guide us and direct us, and we should be able to keep the law. No one can keep the law. Let's go to 1 John, chapter 5, verses 1 through 3, and see what the Scriptures have to say about that. All right, 1 John chapter 5. Okay, so whosoever believeth that Yeshua is the Messiah is born of Elohim, and everyone that loveth him that he begat loveth him also that is begotten of him. By this we know that we love the children of Elohim, when we love Elohim and keep his commandments. For this is the love of Elohim, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. His commandments are not grievous. His commandments are not a burden. His commandments are not a problem. So, to say that it's impossible to keep his commandments, John has written this letter and says his commandments are not grievous. It's not a problem to keep his commandments. There's nothing in his commandments that says that we can't do. It's a matter of discipline, of course. Abiding in the Spirit may not accomplish those of the flesh, but as far as being impossible to keep, that's not an issue. In Romans chapter 7, verse 6, often quoted, proving to us that we don't have to keep the law. It's right here, written in Romans chapter 7, verse 6. So let's look at Romans chapter 7, verse 6. It says here, but now we are delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in oldness of the letter. See, it says right here, we're delivered from the law. We don't have to serve in the oldness of letter. We don't serve the letter of the law. We're delivered from the law. Romans chapter 7, verse 6. But I think if we would read the rest of the story, it would be quite clear. So let's read verses 7 through 22 and see what else is being said here. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. And that certainly not in the Greek is, it does not exist. It's impossible. It's not possible for it to exist. So it's not possible that for the law to be sin. That's what that certainly not means. It's not possible. There's no way. Nay, I had not known sin but by the law. For I had not known lust except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taking the occasion by the commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived, and I died. And the commandment which was ordained to life I found to be death. For the sin taking occasion by the commandment deceived me, and by it slew me, wherewith the law is holy. Doesn't sound like we're not to keep the law. He says the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good. Was then that which is good made death unto me? Certainly not. But sin, that it might appear sin working in death in me, by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceedingly sinful. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would that I do not, but what I hate that I do. For what I want to do, I do not, but that which I hate, I do. Then I do that which I would not. I consider myself, I consent unto the law that it is good. Now then, is it no more I that is sin, but sin dwelleth in me? For I know that in me, that is, in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing, for to will is present with me, but I have to perform that which is good, I find it not. But how to perform that which is good, I find it not. For the good that I would do not, for the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. Now if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find this law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of Yahweh, after the inward man. So Paul is not saying we are delivered from the law. Paul is saying I delight in the law of Yahweh. If you just read on what he was saying. Okay, now Hebrews 8:13 is another one that they use, which is fun because it only works in the English Bible. It doesn't work in the original language that it was written or inspired. Let's go ahead and read Hebrews 8:13. Okay, in that he says, a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. Funny thing here, the word covenant does not appear in that verse. In the original language, the word covenant is not there. The translators added it, and it doesn't even necessary to be added. Because if we read the beginning of the chapter and get the context, it says, now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. He goes on to say he wouldn't be a priest if he was in the flesh because he's not of the tribe of Levi. But then he says, in that he saith, a new, he made the first old. We have a new high priest. And the one of the tribe of Levi, the son of Aaron, is now being made old by the new one. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. The high priest, not the covenant. But even if it was a covenant, even if it were about a covenant, let's go to Luke 1:66 through 75. So this doesn't work even if it was about a covenant. It's not. But if it was, Paul is saying that the covenant of Abraham does not go away. So let's go ahead and look at this, a couple of verses here, and see what Paul is saying about the covenant of Abraham. Okay, so Luke chapter 1:66, verse 66. Alright, Luke chapter 1, verse 66. Now this is Zechariah, the father of Johanan the Baptist. And he's speaking at the time of Johanan being an infant. And what's he saying? And all they that heard them laid them up in their hearts, saying, What manner of child shall this be? And the hand of Yahweh was with him. And his father, Zechariah, was filled with the Holy Spirit, and prophesied, saying, Blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemeth his people. And he raised up an horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. And he spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he swore to our father Abraham, that he would grant unto us that we be delivered out of the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and in righteousness before him all the days of our life. So Zechariah is mentioning the covenant of Abraham. He's saying the covenant of Abraham, Yahweh has fulfilled the covenant of Abraham. And now we go to Acts chapter 7, verse 6 through 8. And we see the same thing. And Elohim spake this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and they should bring them into bondage, and entreat them evil for 400 years. And the nation to whom they shall be in bondage will I judge, saith Elohim. After that they shall come forth and serve me in this place. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision, and so Abraham begat Yitzchak, and circumcised him the 8th day, and Yitzchak became Yaakov, and Yaakov begat the 12 patriarchs. So we have that being mentioned, and then Bereshit 17, 1 through 13 is when it really happened. So let's go ahead and read the covenant that Yahweh made with Abraham. This all makes sense really fast. So Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 18. No, Bereshit chapter 17. Okay. Genesis chapter 17. This is fun. Yeah, Genesis chapter 17. The covenant made with Abraham right here is being made in chapter 17. So let's go ahead and read this. And we're going to start here in verse 1, and we'll read through 13. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty El. Walk before me and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be called Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be an Elohim unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. And Elohim said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant which thou shalt keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days of old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. For he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed, he that is born in thy house, and he that is brought with money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. So the covenant was made with Abraham. Right? The covenant was made with Abraham. And let's go to Galatians chapter 3, verses 8 through 22. Galatians chapter 3, verses 8 through 22. This is going to make sense right now. Galatians chapter 3, verses 8 through 22. Alright, so when we get there to Galatians chapter 8, we'll read verses 1 through 22. There is no chapter 8. What I write down here. Okay, Galatians chapter 3 and verse 8. There we go. That's why I couldn't find it. It does not exist. Alright, so Galatians chapter 3, verse 8 says right here, and the scripture, foreseeing Elohim will justify the heathen through faith, preached before the good news unto Abraham, saying, in thee shall all nations be blessed. We just read that. Actually, that's Genesis chapter 12. But so then, they which be of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is every one that continueth not in all the things which are written in this book of the law, to do them. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of Elohim is evident, for the just shall live by faith. And the law is not of faith, but the man that doeth them shall live in them. We'll come back to this verse in a second. Messiah has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is every one that hangeth on a tree, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Yahshua Messiah, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men. Though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth it, or addeth thereto. Now, to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Messiah. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of Elohim in Messiah, the law which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. So the covenant was made with Abraham, and it still stands, even though a covenant was made on Mount Sinai. The law, which was given 400 years later, does not disannul the covenant which was made to Abraham. The covenant which was made to Abraham still is in effect. And furthermore, for if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more a promise, but Elohim gave it to Abraham by promise. Wherefore then serveth the law. It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come. Now, how can there be transgressions against the law if the law wasn't existent before it was written down in stone? That's interesting. But the law that was written down in stone, the covenant that was made on Mount Sinai, did not annul the law, the covenant that was made with Abraham. That's our point. Till the seed should come, to whom the promise was made, and was ordained by the angels in the hand of a mediator. Now, a mediator is not a mediator of one, but Yahweh is one. Is the law then against the promises of Elohim? Certainly not. For if there had been a law given which could have given life, verily righteousness should have been by the law. But now they're saying that Messiah has come, and he died for our sins, and because this is the new covenant Yahweh Messiah has made, that whoever believeth in him, this new covenant has done away with But no, the law did not do away with the covenant of Abraham, and Messiah does not do away with the covenant in Mount Sinai. The covenant does not get changed, annulled, or added to. So, even if the Hebrews was written about a covenant, the new covenant does not make the old covenant go away. Now, the new priest makes the old priest go away, and it makes sense when you read it all in context. Hebrews chapter 8 is not talking about a covenant. But even if it were, Paul just got done through so many words saying the covenant made with Abraham was not done away with at Mount Sinai, and the covenant made with Yeshua has not done away with the law or the covenant that was made in Mount Sinai. Alright, so, next point. The law is given to prove that we are not worthy. And we get that from what we just read. Of course, I had not known sin if it hadn't been for the law. So the law is only given to us to show us what sin is. We were never intended to keep it. It's just something that tells us what sin is. That's their logic. But the law is given to prove that we are unworthy. This is an 8-year-old mentality. When many of us were 8 years old, when our parents said, no, you can't do this, we heard them saying, oh, you're not old enough. You're going to break this. You're not going to be able to do this right because you're too young. That's the reason why they said not to do it. It's not like it's dangerous or anything. It's not like it's going to hurt us or anything. It's just because we're not old enough to do it. That's the 8-year-old mentality. So I will do that which they said not to do to prove to them that I am old enough, that I am capable of doing it. So when Yahweh makes this law that says, oh, you can't do this, or don't do this, or please stay away from that, or we go there directly because now we are in Messiah, and we prove we have faith in Messiah by doing that which Yahweh said not to do. An 8-year-old mentality. Okay, but now bad laws often get ignored. So if Yahweh just made this law to prove to us that we're not worthy to be in His presence without the Messiah, or we can't do anything right, so He's making all these laws to make us feel inadequate, then we have to use an example of a law which I just saw recently. Driving down the street to work, there's a shopping center that has a Dollar Tree, nice, and a restaurant. I think the restaurant may have been opened at the time, or it was opening soon, but the light to help people get out of the shopping center was flashing a 4-way stop, and all the cars in front of me just roll right through it. They don't even bother stopping. There's no cars coming out of the shopping center. There's no reason for a 4-way stop, and they took the law into their hands and said, we don't need to keep this law. It's a stupid law. And they didn't stop at the red light that was flashing because there's no reason for them to stop at a red light that's flashing. There's no cars coming out of the other passage. So unjust laws have a tendency to be disobeyed. So if they say that Yahweh made this law unjust, an unjust law, suppose like if you were to come across a carcass of a dead insect, then you would become unclean, and you'd have to stay unclean until sunset, which means you probably stay away from people, and if you were a priest, you wouldn't be eating of the set-apart offerings, you wouldn't be eating of the priest until sunset. I mean, you can go 12 to 16 hours, who knows when you became unclean, or whatever caused you to become unclean, just remain unclean till sunset. After the sun sets, it's a new day. Then you can eat. Then you can fellowship, wash in water, and remain unclean until sunset. But that's an unjust law. So they have justification in breaking the law because it's not. If they say it's impossible for us to keep the law, if it's impossible for us to keep the law, then we shouldn't even try. Again, an 8-year-old mentality, but it's... Yeah. Bad laws often get ignored. All right, another law, rule. This is a good example because it shows how much a loving Father would give us these laws, not to prove that we're not capable, but to keep us from danger. Now, Laura wrote this. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but in the stories of the Ingalls family moving from place to place, they just got moved out of the by the force. They were in the Indian Territory in Oklahoma, and the government moved them and said, you are not going to stay here. This is Indian territory. It's not your territory, and you're not allowed to stay on this land. So they moved, and Paul sold his horses to a nice Norwegian man in Minnesota and acquired his land for the price of the horses. And on this land was a Plum Creek, actually, and there was a nice swimming hole. And they went to the swimming hole, but Paul told the children, Laura and Mary and Carrie, to stay out of this area. And Laura did not pay attention. So Paul reaches down underneath her and grabs her by the ankle and pulls her down, just to show her the danger that she can't handle herself in that large water. But it wasn't because, oh no, you're too young. It was because it was dangerous for anyone to be in that water, especially a small child. And Laura disobeyed the law. And we often disobey the law, and Yahweh has to teach us that the law is actually for our life and not against us. But the law was not made just to prove to us that we're not worthy. Alright, no one can keep the law. Okay. We've already done that one. Okay. That's where I messed up. I knew I was messing up on my notes. No one can keep the law. We've already done 1 John 5:3. Let's go to Galatians chapter 4, verse 9. That's the other argument they have here. Galatians chapter 4 and verse 9. It says here, but now, after that ye have known Elohim, or rather are known of Elohim, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? Okay, the word again appears there twice. Paul's talking to the Galatians, and the Galatians at that time were turning back to their idolatry. And Paul's saying, why turn ye again to the weak? You can't have again. I cannot go back to Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. So someone says, why don't you can't go back to Alaska. It's like, you're right. I've never been to Alaska. I can't go back to a place I've never been to. I can't go back to some place I've never been. They have never kept the law. They are now trying to keep the law. They're now being obedient, as is written in Acts chapter 15. They're going to hear this read every week on the Sabbath. The Spirit will teach them. They're going to get this. We don't need to make all these laws for them to follow. They're going to hear this. They're going to get it. They're going to do it. And they are going to get it, and they're going to do it. But Paul is not saying, why are you going back to keeping the Torah? They never kept the Torah in the first place. They can't go back to keeping the Torah. They were going back to the idolatry. They're going back to their old traditions. And Paul's saying, why do you want to go back to those? It's not going to profit you to go back to those. But you can't go back to keeping the Torah. This verse has nothing to do with keeping the Torah. They can't go back to something they never did. Alright, so, and that's interesting, because it says, let's read the entire verse here. But now, after you've known Elohim, or rather are known of Elohim, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements whereto you desire again to be in bondage? You observe days and months and times and years. So these could be birthdays. These could be the winter solstice. This could be the fall equinox. Could be the spring equinox. They have all these times which they always had these pagan holidays. And Paul's saying, why do you want to go back to observe these? But the interesting thing is, when I read this in the King James, it says you observe days and months and seasons and years. And when I read in Deuteronomy, and we're not going to go there, it's just Deuteronomy, or Devarim 18:10, it says keeper of times. And I thought maybe they were related, and I dug deep trying to find if they were related or not. They weren't. They are not. They were not, and they will not ever be related. But the keeper of times there is, if you were, the Greek word that appears in the polyglot, the Hebrew word is unclear. It's from an unused root. But the Greek word that appears in the polyglot, if you take that word and go into Google Translate, it comes out drugs. So it's interesting also that they want to say, oh, you can't go and keep this law because you're not proving your faith. But they have no problem. I'm not going to have a problem with anyone who, Yahweh created the herbs. He gave the herbs as a healing for the people, so that's not a problem. If Yahweh's Spirit is telling you that this is what you need to do, and this herb has been given to you for that purpose, then that's not a problem. But the ones that have a problem saying, oh, you can't go back and keep Torah because that's showing a lack of faith, are the first ones to reach to the medical doctors and take their drugs. Do we not have faith? James writes, if one of you is sick, let the elders pray for him. The prayer of the elders will make him well. Now, if the elders pray for you, and Yahweh says take this herb, or Yahweh says take this pill, that's Yahweh providing the healing. And I'm not saying anything against that. I am saying that the same ones who are against us doing what Yahweh said, we're not supposed to do what Yahweh said because it shows a lack of faith in Yahshua, are the same ones who show a lack of faith in the faith healing as well. That's just a side note. But keeping the law does not show a lack of faith in Yahshua, as we've already studied. We've already seen that. Okay, go to part 2. Okay, to be free from sin. Now this is just basic, not basic, it's geometry, it's measurements. It is somewhat complicated, but if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. If you had a triangle, 60 plus 60 plus 60, you have the law that all the angles are equal, and the segment from A to B is one length. The segment from B to C is another length. So the segment from A to C has to be the same length. And it doesn't matter if you have different angles. If one of the angles is 90 degrees, then the other two angles would have to add up to 90 degrees as well to be 180 degrees. And so A squared plus B squared will equal C squared. It works almost on any triangle. But if A equals B and B equals C, A must equal C. It's just a matter of equality. If A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. It's a matter of logic. Just pure and simple logic. B and C are the same length. B and C are the same number. So if the distance between B and C is 5, and the distance between A and B is 5, the distance between A and C is 5. They're equal. You can lay the three lines, A to B, that line is 5. B to C, that line is 5. So A to C, that line has to be 5. They are equal. The line A to B equals the same length as the line B to C, so the line A to C, yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna beat this dead horse up anymore. They're equal. So let's go to the scriptures and see what happens when they're equal. Matthew 1:21. Not Malachi. I went too far. Matthew 1:21. All right, when Yahweh is appearing, and a messenger of Yahweh is appearing to Miriam and Joseph in Matthew 1:21, and she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Joshua, for he shall save his people from their sins. Okay, so the son that was born to Miriam, Joseph is being instructed, you will call his name Joshua, because he will save his people from their sins. So Joshua, the son born to Miriam, the Messiah, the predicted one coming, is to save people from sin. So that's A. Okay? So what is sin? Let's go to Yohanan, 1 Yohanan, chapter 3, verse 4. First John, chapter 3, and verse 4. And keep jumping from Hebrews to Revelation. Alright, there we go. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is transgression of the law. So Yeshua came to save us from sin. Sin is transgression of the law. Yeshua came to save us from what? Transgression of the law. He came to save us from law breaking. In our flesh, when we were weak, we were incapable of disciplining our flesh and controlling our flesh, especially the reflex reactions, which happen before we can even think to stop it from happening. So transgression of the law happened. That is sin. Yeshua came to save us from sin. Sin is transgression of the law. Yeshua came to save us from transgression of the law, from breaking the law. Yeshua came to save us from breaking the law. Okay, he will save people from breaking the law. Because A equals B and B equals C. So A must equal C. Let's go to Matthew 7, verse 9. Matthew chapter 7, verse 9. Okay, Matthew chapter 7, verse 9. Okay, Yahshua is giving teaching here about if ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be opened. Yahweh is gracious, he's good, he's going to give us all kinds of good things. And an example he gives here, it says, or what man is there of you whom if his son asks bread, we'll give him a stone. Or if he asks a fish, we'll give him a serpent. If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father, which is in heaven, give good things to them that ask him? So, the law is given at Mount Sinai. How much more will our Heavenly Father give good things to those that ask him? If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of Yahweh, and it will be given. So is Yahweh giving us these laws to prove to us that we're not worthy to be in his presence, and we need to call upon Yahshua to save us from the Yahweh that's going to drop us into a fire if we dare break one of his laws. Is that what's going on here? Or is Yahweh giving us good laws because he loves us as a loving father? How many of you guys out there are good fathers and give good things to your son? Did you ever tell your sons to take a nap? You can see they're getting frustrated, they're getting tired, they're out of control. It's time for them to take a nap and rest because they need to take a nap and rest. How many words were used when Yahweh said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy? He went on and said, 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh is the Sabbath of Yahweh the Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, not only thou, but also your manservant, your maidservant, the sojourner within your gates. You're not okay, so someone's staying with you, someone's taking refuge with you, or as a guest, and they're not Hebrew, and you can say, okay, well, I'm not allowed to work today, but you can cook me a meal. I mean, I'm nice enough to let you stay here. No. They don't work, especially so you won't have to work, but they don't work, you don't work, nobody works. And he went through all those laws and all those words to say this, so everyone can rest and enjoy the day off. Just as your son, who's getting grumpy, getting irritable, becoming belligerent, needs to rest, you rest. Yahweh maketh me to lie down in pastures of green. It's not he made pastures of green for me to lie down. If I choose to lay down, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Wow, this is a nice green pasture Yahweh made. No, he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He restoreth my soul. He made the Sabbath day. Man was not made for the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day was made for man, so that we can rest and be refreshed. In this day and age, it's very difficult to do. I mean, you turn on the computer so you can share some Bible verses, or you can watch an online teaching on the computer, and then you're bombarded with all this. Yeah, this guy was censored by the Congress, and this guy was that, and this guy's going to launch some weapons, and this guy's going to do this, and that guy's going to do that, and this country's going to do. You're bombarded by all this. Emerging our statistics within ourselves, and try and filter that out, and not allow that to cause us any stress on this day. We're off. We got the day off. Yahweh's given us this day off. We should take it. But just as you are ordering your son to take a nap, Yahweh's giving us a nap. He's giving us a time out. He's giving us time that we don't need to be bothered by the world. The greatest thing about the Sabbath, though, is how awesome Yahweh proves the Sabbath. If you were in business for yourself, the way the week progresses, Sunday is almost dead. Monday picks up. They got through Sunday. Tuesday picks up a little more. Wednesday, oh no, can I make it through the rest of the week? After Wednesday, oh yeah, I made it. So Thursday's big. And of course, Friday and Saturday are really big. Friday is when they get paid. And Saturday is when they have all this money. And guess what? Saturday is the day we're told not to open the doors, not to sell our products, not to do business. And yet we have everything taken care of. Yahweh provides for us. Yahweh gives us food. He gives us a place to stay. He gives us everything. And we don't need to go out and face all those crowds. And it's great. I mean, I could take a brick, a concrete, a cement brick. I could go out there and stand in the busiest corner and say $5, $5, $5. I'm meeting so many people. 1 in 300 chance I'm going to get it. Well, there's 1 in 300 chance there. There's 300 people there constantly in my face, all around. It's busy. There's hustle. There's bustle. I'm going to find that 300th person. They're going to give me $5 for a brick. It's that good. And that's the day Yahweh says, sit back. Stay at home. I got you. You don't have to go out there and face these crowds. You don't need to be out there with that stress. You don't need to have all those people in your face. Yeah, if you did go out there with all those people, you're going to make some money. But to prove to you that Yahweh is the one that provides, He's picked the busiest day of the week for you to take the day off. Not only is it the most stressful day, so now you don't have to face that stress. Yahweh loves you enough to say, oh, you don't need to face that stress. But Yahweh proves to you that on the day when you can make the most money, you don't work. And everybody's out there facing all this stress and getting themselves stressed out and taking years off their life, facing all this stress and making all that money, and you are more prosperous than they are by taking the day off. As a father tells a son to take a nap, Yahweh tells his son to take a nap. Not a burden, not an obligation. It's a token of his love. He gives good things to his children. Now, if your son was out by some wild berries, and you guys are on a nature preserve, you're not on a nature walk, and your son sees some wild berries and tries to eat those berries, you're like, oh no, don't eat those. They're not good for you. Sound familiar? Leviticus chapter 11. These you eat among the animals, these you do not. The pig, although he has a cloven hoof completely divided, he does not chew the cud. What? It's not good for you. It's not good for you. A father says, no, don't eat these berries. You'll get sick. They're not good for you. A father says, oh no, don't eat this. It's not good for you. A Father in heaven gives us good things, does he not? There's no obligation, no burden, no restriction, just good advice. We can go on with all the examples, everything. Everything, he said, is good for us, right? Let's go to Matthew chapter 4, verse 4. Okay, we'll start in verse 1 to get the context. Then was Joshua led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of Yahweh, command that these stones be made bread. Okay, two things are going on. First, I want you to prove to me that you are who you say you are. If you are the Son of Yahweh, just go ahead and make these stones into bread so you can establish that you are the Son of Yahweh. And of course, he's been fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, and he's hungry, so it's something easy for him to do in the first place so he can have some bread to eat. But what was his answer? But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahweh. So Yahweh had the words proceed out of his mouth about the animals. These you eat, these are not good for you. Yahweh had the answer about the Sabbath. Everything that Yahweh said is words to live by. Of course, the context when Yahshua said that, it was out of Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. He says, I've given you this manna to try you, to prove to you that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of Yahweh. So Yahweh gave us the manna. He could have given us a feast, but instead he gave us this stuff like coriander seed. Looks like bdellium. Tastes like oil. Just basic nutrition without much flavor. To prove to us, to show us that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of Yahweh. The words of Yahweh are words to live by. For time's sake, we're not going to go and read all these. Write these down. Read them. Read them, please. I'm not going to read them to you. I'm going to let you read them for yourselves. Wayikra, which is Leviticus 18, verse 5. It's Leviticus 18, 5. Devarim, which is Deuteronomy 4, 1. Deuteronomy 4, 1. Write these down. Read them, please. Read them for yourselves. It's actually better for you to read them for yourselves than for me to read them to you. Okay, Nehemiah. Or Nehemiah. You want to get technical and call him by the name he was called, which is honoring him and showing him respect. That's why we call upon Yahshua instead of the way it's spelled today, pronouncing it the way we think it should be pronounced, the way we've been taught. We try to honor Yahshua by speaking his name the way it was given to him, the way it was told when he walked the earth. Anyway, Nehemiah, chapter 9, verse 29. Nehemiah, chapter 9, 29. Yetzkel, chapter 20, verse 11. Ezekiel, if you will, chapter 20, verse 11. Write these down and read them at your own time. Romans 10, 5, Galatians 3, 12. I think we've already read those, or we will. Yeah, we have read Galatians 3:12. I promise we come back to it. Well, looking at the clock and say, no, I'm not going to say the clock's dominating or ruling, and I'm going to cut things short because of the clock. But there's no reason for us to turn to these verses right now and read them right now. This is your homework assignment. So, write these verses down right now and read them, please, at your own leisure. And we already have read Galatians 3:12. Romans 10:5. How many times in the scriptures, and that's probably not all of them. Those are the ones I chose to read today. But that's probably not all of them. Where the word says, if you do his commands, you will live. His command is life. That's what all these verses saying the same thing. If you do these commands, you will live. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that flows out of the mouth of Yahweh. And I was supposed to actually twist that verse and say, man shall not live by bread alone, but by some of the words that flow out of the mouth of Yahweh. No, it's every word that flows out of the mouth of Yahweh. And I didn't go there, but I should have, because it's fun. Because that's what the mainframe churches are saying, the assemblies, the teachers on the radio and on TV. They're saying, "Oh, we don't have to do these." But those are the words that he spoke. It's simple. Does he love everybody? Did he create everybody for life? Does he know everything? Everyone says, "Oh yeah, he knows everything. Oh yeah, he loves unconditionally." Did he speak these words? Does he love you? Does he care? Does he know? Does he care? If he knows everything, that's why he said this is for all generations. Oh, I didn't know you guys would invent refrigerators. Oh, I didn't know you guys could create antibiotic drugs and give these antibiotic drugs to these animals and keep these animals and feed them good stuff instead of dead animals or dead bones. Now they're feeding fresh vegetables. And oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know everything. No, he knows everything. He knew we could feed them nice, clean fresh vegetables. He knew that we would invent these chemicals to shoot into them. And he knew that we would invent ways of keeping things so bacteria cannot grow. And he said, for all generations, you do not eat these, the carcasses you abominate. Does he know? Does he care? He said this. Why did he say this? Oh, just to prove to us that we're not capable of doing it. No, sorry. I'm not buying that one. Alright, so why would they do this? It's just human nature. Nobody likes to be reprimanded. No one likes to be chastised. No one likes to have something in their face. I mean, you're driving down the street, you got the sign saying, please do not drive over 55 miles per hour. No one likes that. No one likes if you're in the car with them, you read the sign. You're going down the street at 85 and you read the sign says, oh, that sign says we should only go 55. No one likes that. The law was written in stone because of repeated transgressions. So now we have this stone staring us in the face saying, you will not do this. You will not covet. You will not steal. You will not murder. We got this in a stone written down now. No one likes that. So they're teaching that, oh, we don't have to do that. That was just for those people. That was just to show us that we have sin in us. That was just, they don't want to do it. A good example, they have signs on top of the lockers at work that say, do not put anything on top of the lockers. And I always point out and say, is that sign on top of the locker? I thought you said not to put anything on top of the lockers. Do that for humor. But also now, the night crew got bored. They didn't have that much work to do. So they cleaned up the break room. And there is a box of shirts on the floor in the break room that were not used. They ordered too many shirts for us to use. He ordered enough of every size, but then some people chose other sizes, and you have this box of shirts on the floor in the break room, and they decided to clean it up. They put that box of shirts on top of the lockers. I moved the sign that says, do not put anything on top of the lockers, right in front of the box of shirts that they put on top of the lockers. No one likes that. You're driving down the road at 90 miles per hour, and someone says, oh, the sign says 55. No one likes that. No one likes the law when it's right in your face like that. That's why the law was at Mount Sinai. It was written in stone by what? By who? Yahweh's own finger. Yahweh wrote them with his own finger. Literally. Those stones were empty, and Yahweh wrote on them, and Moshe is witnessing this writing on the stone, and all he's doing is sitting at that. Of course, Moshe broke them when he saw that Aaron had bended the law again. Maybe it was Pentecost, as tradition holds. Maybe it was one of the feasts, and Aaron's like, I don't know, Moshe's not here, I gotta make these people do this. So they put all their gold together, and this golden calf just came out. All by itself. Of course not. They molded it. But anyway, they molded it into a calf. And when Moshe sees them singing and dancing around there, he takes the stones and throws them to the ground and gets their attention. And of course they shatter. Then Moshe has to chisel out the stones himself. And again, witness Yahweh writing with his own finger. Yahweh wrote them with his own finger. Yahweh cares enough to write these with his own finger. But then nobody likes to see that stone right in our face saying, you can't do this. But it's there. All right, let's go to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. I'm going to wrap this up. Abraham, yeah, Abraham. I stand corrected. It's Abraham. But anyway, chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that doth easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Yahshua, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endureth the stake, despising the shame, and is down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim, despising the shame. Cursed is everyone who is hanging on a tree. He took the curse for us, and he's now sitting at the right hand of Yahweh Elohim. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin, and ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh from you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of Yahweh, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom Yahweh loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. If ye endure chastening, Elohim dealeth with you as sons. For what son is he whom the Father chastiseth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye illegitimate son, and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? For they verily for a few days chasteneth us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now, no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees. Follow peace with all men, and holiness, without which no man can see Yahweh. Looking diligently lest any man fail of the grace of Elohim, lest any root of bitterness spring up, trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Let's go to Romans chapter 7, verse 19 through 25. For the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. Now if I do that I would not, if I do that which I don't want to do, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of Yahweh after the inward man. But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity, the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? I thank Elohim, the Yahshua Messiah, our Master. So then, with the mind, I myself serve the law of Elohim, but with the flesh, the law of sin. Let's go to Galatians 5, verse 16. Okay, Galatians 5, verse 16. This I say, then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary, the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led by the Spirit, ye are not under the law. And Romans chapter 8. chapter 8, verse 1. There is therefore no condemnation to them which are in Messiah Yeshua, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua hath made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, Yahweh sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against Elohim. For it is not subject to the law of Elohim, neither indeed can be. So then, they that are in the flesh cannot please Elohim. But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of Elohim dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. And if Messiah be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit is life because of righteousness. But if the Spirit of him that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Messiah from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Spirit that dwelleth in you. So, abide in the Spirit, and you will not accomplish the lust of the flesh. For the law is given because he loves us. And we show that we know he loves us, and we show our love for him by doing as he said. Just as a child playing in the street. The cars roll faster in the street. Mom doesn't understand. They don't roll in the grass. But mom says, if you love me, get out of that street. Yahweh says, if you love me, fill in the blank with everything that he said. He loves us, he cares for us, and he knows. His law, his Torah, his good advice is that good advice. As a loving father would give advice to his son, Yahweh has given us his advice. Furthermore, he's poured out his Spirit now that gives us the power over the flesh, that we may never sin again. Yeshua came to free us from sin, free us from transgression of the law. And so it is. Shalom.